I was playing against Leonid Solin. I'm not sure you know him. I was warned before the game that he is a chess talent because he is, he was at some point European champion under 16. Right? So he's definitely a talented guy. Okay, maybe right now he's not playing professionally, but if somebody has become a European champion at 16, it definitely tells you quite something. Obviously, there's a big talent involved. And yeah, I was really looking towards to continue my winning streak with the white color because recently I've been having very good results with the white color, basically winning something like 90%. 95% of the games. And when I was looking at Leonid's games, I noticed one thing. He has a major flaw. This is usually what chess professionals do. When we are doing a preparation and when we check what they have played before, we're trying to find some loopholes in their preparation. And I noticed he is playing a really weird Catalan. With black. He's playing really weird Catalan. And then I noticed, for example, if I start with d4, let's say d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, g3, he tries to compensate it with d takes on c4. So I'm thinking, what should I do? I decided to change the order of the moves. So I start with Reti. Knight f3, d5, g3, knight f6, bishop g2. And now the point is, if he continues with e6, castle, bishop e7, d4, castle c4, I have simply avoided this system. Because now, d takes on c4 is not the same. There's some nuances. Right? Because in this line, all you need to know, in this line, black doesn't play bishop e7, but he plays ideas like a6, b5 very early, or knight c6, rook b8, and plays b5. So this is a very, very nice system for black. So I change the order of the moves, and I avoid this. And this is where things get really interesting. Because my opponent, he suspects what I'm up to. And after the game, he confessed. Yeah, he confessed that he had a suspicion that I'm going for the Catalan, which he said probably is his Achilles heel at the moment, and he decided to avoid it. So he played knight e7. And knight e7 is a pretty weird move, right? Because normally I haven't seen this move. So either you play e6, bishop e7, either you play c6, bishop f5 or bishop g4, either you play c5, knight c6 and try to play e5, but of course white is not going to allow that. But knight e7, this is something I haven't seen before. And the first thing I do, I try to compare this with a different line, because there is a line here after g3, knight e7, which I believe was brought in practice, at least at the highest level, by Kirill Alexeyenko against Sergei Karyakin, 2019 Isle of Man Grand Swiss. Or was it Grand Swiss at the time? I don't remember. I think it was. So Alexeyenko played knight e7 with the idea to push e5. So white reacts with d4. And there's this very cool idea to play knight b6, stopping c4. And then black plays something like bishop f5, e6, essentially giving Alexeyenko a very nice victory in the end. So I know this line, I know the nuances. But I try to understand what is the difference of including bishop g2 and knight e7. And I understand the difference. So I can now play c4. Look at this. This is really interesting. I play c4, try to undermine his center. Now e5 is not so great, right? Because, his center is really shaky, right? I could play something like d4 or knight c3. And the knight is supposed to be on c6, not on d7. Okay, these are really nuances. But the key idea is this. If he takes it, which was in the game, I play knight a3. And now he can't play e5, knight c4, e4. Because I have knight g5 and I start to bother this pawn on e4 in earnest. So how do I know this? Because in this line, after knight e7, c4 is not so great. Because the best response for black is to play knight a3, e5, knight c4, and now he has access to e4. So I have no knight g5 anymore because the queen protects the square. And then everything else is worse, like knight e4, knight h4, I'm not challenging the pawn. Black plays something like knight f6, knight b6, and has just a great game. So we include one move, and everything changes. So that's why I played c4, and I was thinking if he's going to play e6 or c6, we just transpose to some sort of a Catalan, which he was not happy to go. So he decided to play d takes on c4, knight a3. Now e5 is not so great. He played knight b6. Very common trick, knight takes on c4. Black doesn't get to keep the pawn. The point is, knight c4, queen a4 check, I win back the piece, and I control the center. The only thing I was really surprised is the speed my opponent was playing. And for a moment I was thinking, could it be that this is some sort of an opening prep? But I very quickly dismissed this thought because this is no danger to me. And essentially we're playing some sort of a Catalan position or some sort of a Slav position where black has committed to d takes on c4 and queen takes on c4. And if I get to control the center, pawns on d4 and e4, I know for the fact white has an advantage. So this is definitely a victory for me in the opening. He played queen d5, which is a very cool move, by the way. So he offers a trade, and if I don't do that, he's ready to lift the queen on h5, play bishop h3, and play something like e6, be solid. Quite amazingly, after the game we discussed, and this is not very often you hear, but both of us, we are happy with the opening. So I was very happy with the opening because, you know, I basically got an advantage after the opening with no real fight. I mean, just a couple of moves, and I know I'm better. And also he was very happy because he said that, I mean, he was getting an easy plan. So yeah, this is something you don't see very often because quite often the opinion of the players is the same. So if somebody says I'm better, the other one agrees, yeah, you're definitely better, etc. So this time both of us, we were perfectly happy with the results. So I play b3, which is I think pretty smart. And now the point is he can't really take it. Why he can't do this? Because let's say he plays something like g6. Yeah, otherwise, how do you bring the bishop in the game? I play rook b1, d3. And, I mean, black is literally paralyzed. And look at this. It seems it's about equal. We have queens off the board. Black has no obvious weaknesses. But how exactly do you plan to develop your queen side? I mean, I want to play a4, a5, a6. Very simple plan. Maybe bishop f4 to bother the rook on b8. Maybe also knight e5, knight c6. Short castle. I can always double the rooks. Black can't easily play b6 because after knight e5 the pawn on c6 is under attack. It's just a major problem. And even if black achieves b6, c5 somehow, I play a4, a5 and I cause him major problems to hold these pawns. I have one pawn island, which is very fluid, and he has two islands with weaknesses, right? So that's why he can't really take it on c4. He played g6 instead. I mean, unfortunately for him, he is never in time to play e5 because I'm going to take on d5 and grab the pawn. So he can't play e5. He played g6. So I thought, okay, short castle, there's no need for me to delay this. Bishop g7, and now I was choosing between some continuations. First I was thinking about the idea like bishop a3 to keep the king in the center. Yeah, if he castles short, I take on here on e7. Yeah, but the more I was looking at this, I was not really sure. There could be something like queen a5, hit the bishop, bishop b4, queen c7. Now this bishop is a target for some knight e5, bishop e6, a5, a4 ideas. So I very quickly discarded this bishop a3 as something I want to do. Yeah, by the way, after the game, my opponent said that he was afraid I'm going to play bishop b2 and take on d5. And his idea was that this is a very nice position for me to pressure. And actually I think he is right. This is looking really promising. But what I'm slightly afraid of is that the pawn structure for black is very healthy. And even if I control the c file, probably in the long run, black should be able to hold this. Yeah, something like this. Yeah, I mean, I do crash through. It seems I'm very active, like castles. He plays rook d8 with the idea to play knight e8, draw away the rook, bishop f8, and yeah, I just can't. I just can't make a progress. Maybe I can somehow sacrifice an exchange here, but I mean, this is everyone's game. I have very nice control to dark squares. Here, maybe knight e5, something bishop c3, h4, bishop h3, f3, I don't know. But yeah, I briefly looked at this, but what I didn't really like is that I have already the center. So why should I want to trade it for an open c file? Which I know that sometimes it could be not enough. So I played castles. Yeah, now I play bishop b2 with the idea that I'm going to go for d4, e4 idea. He played a castle. And this is where some understanding probably was missing for me. So I was seriously considering to choose between d4 or d3. And maybe d3 is a more cautious move because I control d4 square. But then again, I'm thinking ahead that I should be trying to get a powerful pawn center with d4 and e4. And what I did not understand is that now after d4, he can take it and generate some counterplay with this long diagonal. Yeah, you see, this was not a possibility when I had a pawn on d3. And I would play something like e3, bishop e6, rook c1, rook c8. Black is thinking about c5. So, I mean, white is definitely slightly better, but probably black gets the dynamics he was looking for. So this is something I will take away for me in similar positions because, I mean, I don't really understand them, these nuances. And at least according to an engine says the right move to continue is d4, is d4, castles and bishop a3 first. Be better ready for queen c4, b takes on c4, and knight e4. Okay, I was not really sure, so. All right, let's go to the critical moment. Bishop b2, castles, d4, queen h5. And this was quite interesting because I think that one of the things that people really overestimate, and I had a feeling that my opponent overestimated, is the importance of this bishop trade. Because I already had won a very nice game in a very similar structure against, what's his first name? I'm sorry, I don't remember. Nicola Antonio from Italy. We're playing in French Team Chess Championships in 2022. And I won a very nice game. And he also executed the same idea. He played bishop h3, bishop g2. And then his position just collapsed. And my logic is that too many players here automatically play moves like rook e1, bishop h3, and bishop h1 with the idea that, listen, I mean, my bishop is such a powerful bishop here, so I'm definitely going to ignore it. But my logic is, why? I mean, why would I want to keep this bishop here on g2? It does nothing here. I mean, on this long diagonal, right? I mean, if it had the pawn structure on b6, c7, okay, maybe, right? Rook e1, bishop h1, knight e5, and I control the long diagonal. Exactly, F. I also don't really mind a trade. I mean, it takes black 2 tempi. Okay, you can do that. So I played rook e1 with the idea to play e4. Yeah, I don't mind the trade. For example, bishop h3, e4, takes, a4, a5, a6, maybe put the knight on c5, target these pawns. Very easy game, right? I mean, there's a very good reason why controlling the center is one of the backbones of success in chess, right? I mean, you can call all the shots if you control the center. So he played knight e7, and this is a move which really puzzled me. And so he plays knight e7. I'm thinking. He wants to play e5. Before rook e1, queen c5? No further cert. Why would I want to play queen c5? I mean, queen c5, he just trades and I lose my center. Hello, Santos. I lose my center. I want my pawns on e4, d4. I don't mind his queen on h5. He can stand there. So he played knight e7. I thought, I mean, either he wants to play knight b6 or play e5, but I thought he probably wants to play e5 to have a proper pawn play. And I'm thinking, how do I stop this? First thought, I should play e4. He plays e5. If I trade many times on e5, I have nothing, like takes, f4, queen, whatever, e5, bishop, whatever, f5. I mean, black is completely fine. I can't do this. So I'm thinking there should be more. I'm thinking probably I should play d5, right? He's underdeveloped, I imprison the bishop, he plays knight b6, and the thing is, I just could not properly evaluate this position. I mean, I felt I'm better, but bishop g4 is incoming, you know? So he will play something like bishop g4, and I basically stopped to calculate here. But the engine says this was the right way to continue. I play knight e2. The bishop on g2 protects the pawn here. I'm thinking about a4, a5 ideas, knight c4 ideas. And now that you say it like that, yeah, I agree. But I did not understand this during the game. I mean, I knew obviously that this is a very common idea in some Grunfeld positions, but I'm not really a d4 player. So I was thinking, how do I stop e5 any other way? And I found an idea. I played rook d1. And there's a cute trick, by the way. If he plays e5, this is a big mistake. I don't take with the knight. I take with the bishop. The point is, I have g4. Now you see, I'm hitting the queen, which is overloaded. He plays bishop g4, I play knight e5, queen e5, I'm winning a piece. So I thought this is really cute trick, right? And the difference is, if I would take with the knight and play g4, I mean, he has queen h2 check. And that's why first it's take with the bishop and not with the knight. And I was considering what's going to happen if he's not going to fall for this. If he's going to play something like rook e8, you know, to improve this idea. And that's why I spent so much time here. I thought maybe I can somehow exploit this weakness here, play h4, especially since chess engines like these aggressive pawn pushes. Also stop bishop h3 idea. For example, e5 is knight g5 idea. But I was not really sure. Let's say he plays something like h6, and what do I do next? What do I do next? Yeah, what do I do next? I mean, e4, e5, d5, knight b6, bishop g4. That's a great square for the bishop. So I was thinking something like maybe queen c2, e5, d5, whatever. Try to evaluate properly what happens after e4, e3, whatever, yeah? So it was not really easy decision for me. Finally, I made up my mind, okay, I'm going to play rook d1 and figure out things later. And he blitzes out knight b6. I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, I spent here something like 15 minutes or 20 minutes trying to figure out what happens after e5, and he just plays knight b6. And after the game, he said he wanted to rearrange the pieces and put the knight on b6. And I said, why did you play knight e7 then? I mean, you could have achieved the same with knight e5. Right, the knight is seemingly more active there. Okay. So, yeah, rook d1 here. Now, yeah, by the way, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. Yeah, here, one more thing. He can't move the bishop. There's a very cute trick. Look at this. By the way, and this maneuver will prove to be really crucial in several lines. He can't defend the pawn. And that's why this was also one of the reasons why he could not develop the bishop. This queen b4 attacking the pawn on e7 makes his life a bit more difficult. That's why he played knight e7. So I play this rook d1, anticipating e5. He plays knight b6. I play here. And now I think I tricked him. Because I'm expecting he's going to play something like bishop h3. takes. And I was thinking about knight e5, knight e3, knight e5, maybe e4, and I evaluated this position to be really great because I have a beautiful bishop. I can play e4. The bishop knight on b6 is pretty bad. And I thought that he maybe will want to play bishop f5 with the idea after e4, bishop g4, pinning the knight, rook d3, seek some counterplay with f5. And I thought this is pretty dangerous. And guess what? Guess what the engine says? Now watch this. Engine says this is great for white. I continue d5, which by the way is a very logical move. But continue watching the position. So d5, I strike in the center. He takes it. Rook e4. So first, all kinds of tactics with taking an f3 don't really work. Because after bishop f3, somehow white delivers a killing attack. Is this obvious? No. No, it's not obvious. It's not obvious. So the bishop is hanging and the g7 threat is there. The knight on b6 is disconnected. So you have to like properly evaluate. Okay, this line is not really simple. I mean, black could also play knight e5. Maybe more human move. Take it here. Rook e5. Okay, I guess black has to make something like queen h6. And now the key idea. And white has a crushing attack. Because of bishop takes on d5, knight g4, king h8, somewhere queen b2 or queen c3 along diagonal. You know, okay, I mean, when I see it like this on the board, sure, okay, it makes sense, right? But to understand this from afar, when your opponent plays bishop f5, e4, bishop g4, rook d3, f5, because his idea is to generate some counterplay at the king side and also fight for the d5 square, because if the pawn disappears, he plays knight e5, he has an open f file, there's some threats here. I thought this makes perfect sense, and something like d5, wow, I mean, this is something you have to calculate really precisely, but engine says d5 is almost winning for white, almost winning. But instead I play queen c5, I thought that bishop f5 is inaccuracy. The point is I'm pinning the queen and the bishop. I'm also hitting the pawn on e7. And based on the body language of my opponent, you could definitely tell he blundered this move. So the pawn on e7 needs to be protected. He went here. Now, unfortunately, e4 gives nothing. Because he plays bishop g4, I take it. Even if I play something like h3, takes, I mean, black is fine. I mean, why black actually should be worse? Because he's going to double the rooks here, play something like e6. There's a very nice pressure here. And it's quite paradoxical. I mean, I have two bishops. I have the center. But black is all right. Because he has a very nice pressure against the pawn here on d4. And if I play something like e5, he plays knight e5. He has a beautiful knight on d5. So I can't really play e4. But what I can do is play h3. And now this leads to some very cool lines. Because obviously bishop h3, he can't take it. I'm going to take the queen on h5 and the bishop is hanging. The threat is g4. And I was calculating what happens after knight e7. So he drives away my queen from the 5th rank and wants to take the pawn. I go here, I hit the pawn. g4 is a threat. So he has to take. I'm calculating queen b7. And probably he has to get rid of this weakness as quickly as possible. And I had a feeling everything will depend on the proper evaluation of this position. Because if I take it, knight c5, my queen is under attack and my bishop is under attack. So I found an idea. Takes and queen d5. With the idea to threaten queen f7, knight g5. And exactly in this order, because knight g5, queen f5, he defends for everything. And I was thinking, c takes on d4, I can take on f7, I can play knight g5 check, I can play knight h3, the pawn is under attack, and from afar I thought, this is really great. I mean, as usual, I stopped one line or one move too early, And actually after knight c5, black is perfectly fine. Because I can't win this pawn because of a very basic pin. And my knight on h3 is not really doing anything. I'm sure I would have found it if I got closer, if he had continued here. And after c takes on d4, what I can do, I just collect the pawn here. Bishop d4, bishop d4, rook d4, let's say knight f6. Knight f6 is still queen f7. He can't really do it. So, yeah, actually I think it's still queen f7 seems to be an unstoppable threat. So it's not really sure. It's not really clear what he's supposed to do. Yeah, because queen f7, knight g5 still remains. And white has a large advantage. So this is the reason why he didn't go here. He played bishop e6. I thought this is a surprising move. I was expecting only bishop e4, counter my bishop. I would take it, and he said he was afraid of knight h4. And he's probably correct. Because after knight h4, look at this. I suddenly start to get to this pawn. If he plays bishop g6, f4, e4, f5 is a major problem. I mean, the debate is about the ordered moves. Maybe e4 first and f4, f5. This is a problem. So he played bishop e6, takes, I play knight g5, trying to keep the bishop on e6, and also thinking about knight e4, knight c5, trying to get to the pawn on b7. So you see the game is very, very fast-paced. And even if we have the queens off the board, I mean, I still have the initiative. Yeah, and he said, of course, maybe he should have played something like bishop d7. It looks ugly, it looks awful. The pawn on h5 is a weakness, so that's why he didn't really think much. He played bishop f5, e4, and bishop g6. Now, I have an obvious advantage. Why is this? I have the center, he has a weak pawn. He has a terrible knight on b6. I know him better. What should I do? Engine says you should play something like a4, a5. Maybe. I mean, a4, a5 probably favors me, because after some ideas like bishop c3, I can always target this pawn. Why my knight hitting the pawn on b7 is important, asked by Perimeter, because that's a weakness. I mean, this is what you do. You are using your pieces to target weaknesses of the opponent and, I mean, try to conquer them. So this is one weakness, this is a second weakness, right? If I put my knight on c5, it's very difficult for black to defend it because after rook b8, this knight is stuck. It can't really go to d7. I could play ideas like bishop f4, target rook on b8, collect the pawn on b7. I could play ideas like a4, a5, a6, completely ruin his pawn structure. Yeah, that's why I think this knight c5 is a pretty cool idea. So I decided to use my pawn play. Something I've been teaching to my students a lot. I played f4. I knew that this is a very responsible decision, but I mean, I couldn't just help it. I had a feeling I have to keep pushing while the initiative is hot. So this is the big threat. He can't play h6. I go back. This is the threat. And if he plays f5, trying to gain access for the knight, after knight h4, you see the bishop no longer is protected by the pawn on h7. And I just take the pawn on f5 for free. Or maybe knight f5, he takes on f5. So, only move for him is e6. I continue in the same spirit. I play g4. I was slightly concerned that the timing is correct, because my king is quite far away. I would love it to be somewhere on g3, or on f2 at least. Also, the bishop is not really guarding the f4 square, and I was expecting probably he's going to respond with something like bishop h6, trying to counter the threat of f5. Also a key idea, f6 at any given moment. I take on e6 and play f5. I get the bishop pair and a strong center. All the prerequisites to get the winning advantage. So he played h takes on g4, h takes on g4, bishop h6. There's nothing else he can do. Yeah, maybe knight h3 was a possibility. I already had decided I'm going to play king f2. The idea is king g3, knight f3, f5, g5, push aggressively those pawns, and this is a monster chain. And yeah, I mean, I evaluated that this is really dangerous for black, because it might seem it's very solid, But again, how exactly is black stopping this maneuver? For example, a4, a5, and d5. So the position is inevitably opening up. And as soon as it opens up, my bishops, bishop f6, his back rank will be a weakness. The bishop is dead on g6, right? He can't play f6, he can't play h6. Because I could easily go for the mate ideas like rook h1, open up the h-file, d5, use the idea, try to deliver a mate on h8. He can't play f6 for the same reason, and he's just very passive. So he also was afraid to go here. But again, what should he do? He's running out of moves, because what I'm threatening to do is to play king g3, knight f3, and maybe f5. Trap the bishop. So he played f6. There was a very interesting opportunity for him, which again showed some flaws in my understanding. I thought that after f5, I can take on e6 and simply win a pawn. And I saw from afar that this is really great. I mean, I thought I have an extra pawn. I thought I have the bishop pair. The pawn f5, okay, maybe the pawn in the 4 is not really a big deal. I can play rook e7. But the thing is... Oh wait, was it here? Oh, maybe I mixed it up. Maybe not here. I think I mixed it up. Yeah, I think I mixed it up with another line. Sorry, not here. Not here, but where was this? Ah, sorry. Wait, f5. Okay, it doesn't matter. At one moment, this knight e6, rook e6 was not working. I'm slightly confused. Where was this moment? Because black had a counterplay with rook c8, rook c2. Okay? Yeah, here apparently I'm faster. I'm faster because I first played rook e7 myself. So, yeah, and after f6, engine says knight h3 is the move. But I mean, knight e6 was according to my plan anyway. Knight e6, f5, so I transpose the position into something else. Take on g6, and now, I mean, this is a critical moment. I'm sitting here in this position, and I have a feeling, maybe I'm exaggerating, I have a feeling my position is close to strategically winning. Why I'm saying this? So once again, nothing really has changed. I have the center, I have very powerful bishops, and he has some weakened king. And I'm thinking probably at the right time, somehow opening up the position with something like d5, e5 would open up my bishops. He would probably lose a pawn somewhere in the process. And probably he is going for a position down a pawn with no compensation, which should lead to a technically winning position. But the problem is, I am slightly low on time. So this is move 28, and I had something like 15 minutes left. So I had a feeling I should play something a bit more positional, like a4, a5, and think about the right moment to play either d5 or e5. Maybe a4, king g3, a5, bishop f3, and again, look for this right moment. But I decided to force matters, because I'm low on the clock, and time management obviously plays a big role in chess, proper time management. So I played e5, which engine marks as inaccuracy, not big surprise there. He plays bishop g5, and guess what? I almost blunder. So I'm thinking, okay, my idea obviously is, the big idea is d takes, and rook d6. And I'm thinking I'm winning a pawn. And only then it dawns upon me, there's bishop h4. There's bishop h4, right? And for some reason, this move simply skipped my attention. I thought that he only protects the pawn, but actually he also generates a threat. And this one little tempo could make all the difference in the world, because maybe now black had already sacrificed the pawn on c6 and put the knight on e5. And I instantly became very unhappy about my choice. Why did I rush with d5? All right, what's done is done. I mean, I didn't really consider the possibility to sacrifice the exchange. Something like this, and bishop f6, and g5, e5, and whatever, bishop h3. I already didn't have any time. And there's one simple rule. in great positions is I try to follow it, and I always say to my students, never ever do funny business in great positions. So if you have a great position, don't go for interesting sacrifices, because why would you want to do that? You want to keep things under control. Which move should I have prepared for d5 push? Like I already said, a4, a5, king g3. And look for the right moment. But, I mean, I was a bit low on the time, so I forced matters. But unfortunately, I immediately blunder. I mean, I did not blunder because I noticed it, but I blundered this in my calculations. So I had to play king g3, and I suspected that after knight e7, which is a very logical move, takes, rook goes here, I'm threatening, I'll open up the position. Yeah, probably he has to play something like knight e5, here, rook d8, bishop f1. So I saw this from afar and I thought, okay, I mean, I still have chances. I still have chances to win, and despite the fact it's opposite color bishops, there's still plenty of pieces on the board. I can create the pass pawn on the queen side, and maybe it's going to be enough. So this is what I was expecting. He played rook h7, insisting on bishop h4. Well, what can I do? Rook h1. Knight e6. Where do you see knight e6, Ferdinand? You mean here? I already played it. Ah, you mean consider this as a fancy move? No, I think it's just a technical move. Just a technical move. Just to get to bishop advantage and the center. So I kill the center, I get to the bishop pair, and I have a chance to organize a pass pawn with d5. So for me, this is just a technical execution. Not a combination. So I played rook h1, stopping bishop h4. H-file doesn't matter, that's why I take with the bishop. He played rook d8, and now I found a really nice idea. First, it's important to understand what does he want. He wants to play c takes, knight c8, knight e6. So let me just show you. Let's say I go here. C takes, knight c8. I go whatever. I don't know. Bishop c3, knight e6. Black is rock solid. How do I make a progress here? It's very difficult to make a progress. Yeah, d takes on c6, you know, unfortunately it doesn't work. Because he plays either rook d8 or knight e7, but, I had this idea in different lines. For example, after this move, a4. I'm threatening to go a5 and take on c6, because let's say he goes knight c8. This is very shocking. Yeah? He can't stop this pawn. Yeah, this idea is definitely there, so there's all kinds of checks. By the way, check here, and he can't stop this. He can't stop this pawn because I take on c8. Pretty cool. And the same idea also is with knight a8, because again I take on c6 and take on b7. So yeah, after a4, I thought c takes on d5. Now I play e5. And my big idea was to meet knight c8 with not e takes on d5, because he puts the knight on d6, but play e5. Look at this. Because again, ultimately my idea is to open the bishops. If he plays a5, I play bishop c3. This is a weakness. I mean, how do you protect it? Right? That's the point. That's the entire point of a4. Because he doesn't really have a satisfactory response. So, yeah, he played c takes on d5. I played a5. And now the idea is that after knight c8, I play not e takes on d5. I play e5. I play bishop d5. I play bishop e5. And now look at these monster bishops. I'm getting the pawn on b7. And the only question is this a win? I don't know. But I would find it out. Yeah, so maybe b4, b5, b6, a takes, a6, a7. and it wants to spawn to the queens. But actually, you know what engine says? I could have done the same even here. After a4, c takes on d5, engine says I could have played e5 immediately. Yeah, for some reason this move skipped my attention. That I can do it immediately. And again, the same idea is bishop e5. Let's say he takes it, bishop e5, a5 threat, bishop d5 or rook d5 threat. If he plays a5, I play bishop c7, I'm winning the piece. So it's pretty cool, right? All right, so what happened is c takes on d5, a5, and I was expecting that he's going to play knight c8, I'm going to push e5. He played knight e7, stopping e5 idea, stopping my idea to connect the bishops. Tradition suggests rook and bishop is a better endgame than rook and knight. I don't know, it depends, F. It depends really, I'm not sure I can say it like that in general. And now, look at this, I made a mistake here. So again, I should have played e takes on d5 because he doesn't get the blockade on d6 and I'm pushing the pawn forward. For example, knight e5, d6, this pawn is under attack. Let's say b6, a6, creating a weakness on a7. Bishop d5, bishop e6, and I'm pressing. You know, I'm pressing. Very, very nice pressure. This pawn is incredibly strong. Think about ideas like bishop a3. Yeah, I'm not sure how. Maybe get the rook at the c file, crash through d7, d8, put the queen on the board. So I would have very good winning chances. Instead, I miscalculate. And this was really funny because this was mutual, this miscalculation. So I take on d5. I mean, I'm pinning the knight, right? It's a pin. He goes here. Unfortunately, I can't play e5 because his bishop now would protect the rook on d8. I mean, this I saw. But I play bishop d4, and my idea was that, okay, listen, I know that I'm giving up the e5 square, but at least I'm collecting the pawn on a7. If he plays a6, there's bishop b6. He can't take it, I'm taking the rook. If he plays b6, I'm taking the pawn on b6 and I'm winning the knight, so he can't do it. Now, the question is, do you, dear viewers, see where I have miscalculated? It's actually not very difficult. So it was a mutual blindness from both of us. But I mean, it's fair to say that already here I was like having 5 minutes on the clock and my opponent was maybe slightly less. So, so it's easy to hallucinate things and not calculate things properly. Black actually had very good chances to draw this. Now the question is, do you see it? You don't, right? Because probably you believe me. My calculation, you know, sometimes also the opponent trusts the calculation of his opponent. What he could have done. Play b6. So where's the big idea? I can't protect my extra piece. I did not see this. I did not see this. No, this is not really difficult. Yeah, this is not really difficult stuff, right? And that's it. So I have to give up the bishop, retreat, and this is probably just a draw. So he is going to position the bishop on e5 and make some fortress. I'll never win this. Of course, I would try for 100 moves, but this already is a theoretical draw. Maybe even play f5. Trade those pawns, put the bishop on b4 and have a Cuban cigar, you know. So I missed this, and this was the actual mistake. So e takes on d5 and d6 was still giving me excellent chances to win it, but he missed it. And he played king e6 to protect the knight so that the rook can somehow be activated. I took the pawn. And now here, black's position went completely downhill. And again, it's very important. And I really can't stress enough about this. It's really important how you feel about your position. Because if you feel badly, you're making mistakes. And after the game, my opponent said he believed he is already losing. And I disagreed. I said, why? I mean, why do you think you should be losing, right? I mean, you do have some nice control of the dark squares. I mean, I'm only up a pawn. My bishop on h1 is pretty bad. And if you manage to activate your rook together with your two minor pieces, I mean, I'm just up a pawn, right? White should be like completely winning for me. And maybe because of this mindset, it cost black his game. So he played rook h8, which is not a great move. He should have played rook c8. Very easy move. Now the point is, after bishop d4, knight e5, activate the pieces. Let's say rook b5, rook c1. Here, knight c6 maybe is very difficult to find from afar. But the threat is rook c3 check. You know, I think black has no risk here. Because let's say I play something like bishop b6. There's rook c3 check. King f2, knight e5, knight g4. I mean, this could easily be everyone's game. So, I mean, I have my two bishops, but I have also multiple weaknesses, right? So this rook c8 was a very important move. And instead he played rook h8. Because, I mean, it's very often like this. Unfortunately, you see something else. It's like when you're doing puzzles. If you see something, especially in time scramble, you see something and you want to make it work, you're basically not seeing anything else. And unfortunately for my opponent, he was very busy by thinking about where he's counterplay at the king side, because he saw an idea. And that's why he didn't even notice he can put the rook c8 and rook c3. So I play bishop f3, knight e5. And now another mistake from my part, but this was still a time scramble. I played rook b5, a move I was very unhappy about. Because my idea was I'm threatening rook b6, rook b7, collect a pawn with a check. But somewhere deep inside my gut instinct was saying, this is not safe. Why did I not play bishop e2? You know, activate the bishop first. Think about bishop c4. Keep my extra pawn, keep things under control. And he will play something like rook h1, I will play rook b5, and there's a bishop c4 threat at some point. The pawn on b7 is gone anyway, and this would have been an easier way to win the game. And instead I play rook b5. And again, I start to think, what exactly I'm going to do against rook c8? Again, I start to see, I mean, what's the response? And the point is, after rook b6, he plays rook c6. And this is something my opponent rejected because he thought after the trade, he's just entering an endgame down a pawn against two bishops. But actually, when you look at the position more closely, black is pretty active. For example, bishop d2 takes. And my opponent had a very cool idea. After the game, he said there's a threat, for example, bishop c6. Very cool. The threat is a6, a7, a8. I'm not really sure if this works, but fantastic idea. I'm sorry, not here. Sorry, not here, but... Wait, where was this? Maybe there was a different line. The knight was not on e5, and there was this bishop c6, a7, a6, a7. Because, yeah, obviously, now I take with the knight. Yeah, I guess I mixed it up. But this is a very equal endgame, actually. And what happened is that he played knight e3. So we have another very critical situation. Now imagine yourself, this is the tournament situation for you. This is move 38. You need to make two moves to reach the second time control, which is extra 50 minutes on the clock. The question is, what kind of decision do you make with 2 minutes on the clock? One thing I have learned, what I've been taught about throughout my career, is try to avoid making big decisions on move 40. Try not to do that, because for some reason move 40 is the moment when people blunder a lot, because then they get this extra time and they already have blundered things away. And there's actually a very cute trick. Look at this. Whoops. Very easy to miss, because it seems the primary threat is bishop f4 check and rook h2. And suddenly there's bishop h4 and knight e1. So this knight is a very tricky piece on d3. So the right answer, what is the right response to this? Try to repeat the position a couple of times if you can. So luckily for me, I can do exactly that. Rook b6. He can't go king d7. I take the pawn with a check, and this actually would lead to a very funny mate on the board. He can't do this. He can't also go, check here, check. He can't go king d6 to avoid the multiple checks. There's rook d5. I collect the knight. So with these two checks, what I essentially did, I repeat the position. But most importantly, I reach move 40. So I get extra 15 minutes on the clock, and I have all the time in the world figure out the details. And after something like 15 minutes, I made sure there's no tricks. I found the best move, bishop e2. Bishop e2, bishop f4 check. There's nothing black can really do. King g2, rook h2 check. King f1, and unfortunately for black, this is not a draw. Why? You see this bishop here, it controls many critical squares. There's no rook f2, there's no rook h1. Because the point is, I play bishop g1, the knight is under attack, I want to play king g2 next, collect the pawn on b7 and rock and roll with a pawn. So the game finished really quickly. He played knight e1, try and confuse me. This was a good try, because what he wanted is to get here. I mean, trying to bother these pawns maybe from behind, something like b4, bishop d2, rook goes here, you know, maybe there's some chances how black can escape, right? Opposite color bishops after all, so it could be tricky. But the thing is, this knight is going nowhere. I mean, I can take it whenever I want, because if it goes away, I play king g2. So I decide to give a check first, making sure that he can't play king e5. The rook is still here. He went here. And this was probably winning the game on the spot. e5 at bishop d5. I hit the rook at h1 and collect the knight on e1. I had the same idea. I play bishop d5 immediately with the threat of e5. So knight f3 is e5. I'm collecting either the knight or the rook. So he played bishop e5, another check, another check. Everything is done with a check. And now finally I'm ready to take the to push for the a pawn. This piece doesn't matter. This is a big threat. h7, a8. Here, check, here. The knight on f3 is hanging, there's nothing he can do. And here he finally resigned. Now the key idea is I'm threatening to go rook f7 and promote. And if he plays bishop d4, I'm not losing the pawn because I have a check. And I promote to a new queen, which is going to cost black the rook. So, I mean, overall it was a pretty cool game. I did make a couple of mistakes in the end, yeah. So probably first mistake, inaccuracy after the opening, was this early move d4. Yeah, I was not really sure about this. So this part was really good. A couple of tricks in between, here. This queen c4 was a blunder for my opponent. f4, g4, I think this was a pretty cool idea. use the pawn play, knight e6, f5, here. Now another minor inaccuracy. Should have played a4, a5, king g3, have a bit more patience. But again, I was in time scramble. So I blundered the idea of bishop g5 and bishop h4. I simply missed this from afar, so I had to react with king g3. So this was still pretty good. I was having decent chances. e5. Here at this moment, I did not see this. So I played a5, knight c8, and probably a mistake which could have cost me the victory. Rook d5. Yeah, bishop d4, and both of us, we missed this b6. Here, and yeah, and at some moment black had very good drawing chances with rook c8, rook c3 as well. But ultimately, I think it was rather deserved victory.